This is The Healthy Healer, where true voice is your medicine. This is where we help doctors and other healers navigate through the challenging times by learning from the best minds in the healing industry. Laugh, cry, and be surprised. It's entertainment, education, and inspiration so you can continue to be the unique and amazing healer you were destined to be. Welcome to humanity. Welcome to The Healthy Healer with Dr. Fred.
Well, hello, everyone. It's Dr. Fred, and welcome to another wonderful edition of The Healthy Healer, where we interview people who earn their right to become healers by first becoming healthy and then becoming healers. Many people walk into the healing field thinking they're ready to be healers, and they find out differently when they get what the real job description is of what they thought they were walking into. And then life hits them upside the head, and they get a really major dose of what it means to be a human. And then either they recover or they don't. But when they do recover, they come back and become the healer that they were ready to be when they first arrived on Earth. Angela Gentile is my guest today, and she certainly meets this criteria. Her bio has a couple very interesting little factoids. She calls herself an elder millennial, and we're going to learn a little bit more about that in our conversation. She is an NLP teacher and a certified NLP player, and she specializes in helping people become unstuck and stand in their powerful purpose. Angela had her own experiences in life where she was stuck, found her way out, and now leads others on their way out of being stuck. Again, as an elder millennial, she is confident that she can help you and help others get everything you need and to live the life that you came here to live. After all, it is a short opportunity we have, and Angela's commitment is that you live a life now that is a full life and the life you deserve to live in an epic way. Angela has her own podcast called the Empowered Millennials Podcast, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Before we do that, we're going to learn a little bit about who Angela is and how she got to be the healer she now has become. So Angela, welcome to The Healthy Healer. It's a pleasure to have you here, and we've already had some clumsiness on both of our sides, mine more than hers, just getting started, but that's how we met. And sometimes through clumsiness, that's the most intimate way to meet people. What do you think, Angela?
Thank you so much for having me. And it's human. It's just being human. Like, I'm Wilma Flintstone when it comes to technology. I'd rather bang rocks together or meet you in person. But I have adjusted and adapted to this ever-changing technology to make it work. But okay. I'm happy to be here and happy to chat. I think this conversation is necessary, especially when we're talking about taking our journey and really getting connected to our purpose and why we're here on this earth.
Okay, wonderful. And so, Angela, you're located in Boston, Massachusetts this evening. And I want to ask you a question a little bit about a question to give our listeners a little bit of a clue of how you got here. And it's a question I ask most or all of my guests. It's a little 9-letter question that carries a lot of weight and puts people on their heels sometimes, but generally people are able to manage it, and it really opens up some good doors for us to walk into. Yeah, you should be a little bit nervous. Here's the question. The question is, Angela Gentile, who are you?
Ooh. I am a very powerful human being who loves hard and stays as present as she can in her life to enjoy moments with things and people and places that she loves. I consider myself a badass who doesn't follow rules really well and likes to break out of norms and mold and social conditioning and serve as a leader and a trailblazer for people to do the same.
Mm-hmm. That's great. That's a really good start. And there's a lot of themes that you bring forth here, but there's one theme, this idea of being powerful, of being a badass, of not following rules, and being a trailblazer. You earn those stripes. You don't come out, you don't arrive with those particular stripes. That's something you learn when you're fighting back against or along with humanity. What's here to be had? Mm-hmm. Angela, how did you get to be those things? What happened in your life to leave you deciding that it was time to be a powerful badass who doesn't follow rules and is about to trail?
I don't think there was one major event in my life that I think had a cataclysmic shift, like tectonic plate shift in my life. But I think there have been things throughout my life that have challenged me to, I think, stand in myself. But I was raised in a very traditional house and very conditioned to shrink down and be small. So I spent a lot of my life like stifling this big, loud personality because I'm a girl. I was a little girl. Shut up, be a good girl, sit still, be quiet. And I adopted this persona that never really felt right through my whole life, like into my 20s and into my 30s. And I was like, I was angry, and it was like starting to seep out in really negative ways because I didn't have control over who I was. It's like like the animal in you is like trying to claw out. Mm-hmm. And I just wasn't listening. And the world was give me little tiny knockdowns, like things weren't going my way, like lots of heartbreak and loss. And I wasn't listening to like really get it together and have that aha moment to be like, you're not listening. You're not living a life of alignment. You're not living true to who you're called to be. You're playing small. You're trying on all these hats of what you should do and the expectations that other people have for you. But I wasn't listening. And the world just gives you little love taps. Yeah. And every time you don't listen, like the spirit guides of the world gather together at a little caucus and say, what now? How do we up the ante? And things just kept getting harder, more magnified, and I still wasn't listening. And then the moment where my whole life shifted and divided it into a before and an after was when my father passed away.
Yeah, exactly.
So
say more about that. What happened?
Yeah, he died suddenly. It'll be 8 years next week, which seems crazy because it feels like yesterday and a million years ago. It feels like this is what my whole life, I've always felt like this. So it's wild. Grief is just a schizophrenic ride. But he passed away 8 years ago, and he died suddenly from an aneurysm. And I was in my mid-30s, and it's not like I didn't think that my parents weren't going to live forever. Obviously, we know this. We know that we're all on borrowed time, but I didn't get it. I didn't get the sensitivity around and the fragility around life. I didn't understand. So this came as a huge shock and really kicked the shit out of me. And I had what I like to call an emotional yard sale, because this is the first time in my life where I started feeling. I started allowing myself to feel what I needed to feel and allow my emotions to come out as big as they needed to be, because I no longer had space inside of my body to house like all the love that I had from my dad. Because I think grief isn't just sadness, right? It's an amalgamation of all things intertwined in the relationship you had with this person. So this was my awakening to be like, wow, I am feeling everything, and I'm feeling it so fully. And with this yard sale that I was having, all of the things that weren't working in my life were now like laid out metaphorically on the front lawn. And I was like, that's not right. That's not right. That's not what I want. I hate this job. I was a high school teacher for 11, 12 years. And I was like, I hate this job. It's making me miserable. I don't want to do that. My relationships are wrong. My friendships are wrong. Yeah, nothing. Like I want to like crawl out of my own skin. I was like, I hate all of this. And that was the reckoning moment for me to be like, it's time. You get one life. It's so fragile. And at any given moment, we could all just drop dead. What are you doing not living a life that you love? And I made it a mission that I was no longer going to stay in places and with people and doing things that didn't bring me joy. So I quit my job and started in my journey into entrepreneurship, to healing myself, to building a business, and now doing what I'm doing now.
Fantastic. So that's awesome. And the aneurysm that he had, was that an aortic aneurysm or a brain aneurysm? What did he have?
He had a brain aneurysm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so a ruptured aneurysm in his head is what he died from at that point. And it was entirely sudden, like he was fine and then he wasn't.
So he had a stroke a couple of days before. He was having like the TIAs, the little mini strokes that were leading up to the big stroke. And he was, I don't want to get too much into it, but I wanted the doctors to do one thing for the stroke. Like they said, it was a dissection in the artery and not a clot. And I was like, can you be sure? And they said no. And I said, okay, so why don't we treat, if treating for problem A won't impact problem B. Maybe we should just treat for A and like hope for the best. And they said, no, we're just going to let him go home, put him on blood thinners, and like everything will be fine. And I said, okay. I left the hospital. I went back to Boston. My dad was released the next day. And the next day after that, he died.
Wow. Okay.
I think if anybody who is listening who might have been in this situation, like you do the best you can with what the information you have at the time, when your emotions are high and when you're exhausted. I was so tired. I was fighting the doctors for like days in the hospital. And I was like, I'm out of gas. And I no longer blame myself for not doing more because I truly, genuinely think this was the biggest gift that my dad ever gave to me, was to show me how to live. And I think any father and any daughter who's listening is, what a beautiful thing he gave to you. It's a huge, biggest gift.
Mm-hmm. So what happened on that day or in the next week? What was going on right before he died and then that needed to crack open or got the opportunity to crack open on his transition?
On what? I'm sorry, you cut out for a second.
On his
what
transition.
Happened?
Yeah, what's going on right before it was like, what happened that had it be that his sudden death was the fulcrum or the turning point of your life?
Like I said, I just never allowed myself to feel pain like that. I would always just be like, everything's fine, because there was an expectation that like people needed me. My deference as a millennial raised in this culture of shut up, be a good girl, go to school, sit down, do your work, get good grades, go to college, do all that. Like it was deep. My deference was deep. Learning to defer my own feelings, my own needs, my own wants to please and placate everybody around me and do good work. I didn't have space for that anymore. I couldn't. Where was I deferring this to? How could I defer what I'm feeling when I couldn't even name it? I couldn't even name it and I couldn't even understand it.
Was it the sudden nature of his so-called disappearance from this dimension that was the deal? What was the traumatic experience exactly? It wasn't just losing your dad. There's something about the fighting and the almost and the suddenness.
I think it was not honoring myself to be joyful. And I don't know if it was like that was what it was in that moment right away, but I think as I started to feel and suss out my emotions, I was like, wow, I was so fucking unhappy. And what a waste that my dad didn't get to experience time on this earth with his daughter who loved her life and who was joyful. Like this version of me, he'll never get to see. And I think as I started like moving forward and healing and becoming more aware of, I don't want this stuff anymore. I think that's what was so painful, is that I wasn't living.
Yeah.
I wasn't happy.
Yeah.
And like my dad had to die in order for me to get the message from the Spirit Guide Caucus.
Yeah.
And that was what I think was most painful, is that he had to go in order for me to live and to feel and to understand how to recalibrate and realign myself. Because I don't know how else I would have learned that.
Yeah. Swift kick. It was like the small little nudges on your shoulder weren't big enough.
Weren't working. What is it? The feather you learn by a touch of a feather, the weight of bricks, or the backing up of a cement truck. Cement truck, gal.
Yeah. Yeah. So what happened over the next year or two? Who did you become and who are you now? Who would you say is what's embodying a woman now who's actually living a life of joy?
Yeah, it's so much more peaceful. I think when you get rid of a lot of the toxicity in your headspace all around that narrative of, and you reprogram yourself instead of saying, I'm not good enough, I should be doing this is what people need from me, I won't be a good fill in the blank of the role here, mother, wife, daughter, friend, employee, whatever, if I don't do this, right? And I think when you start to rewire that and look at your inherent goodness, your innate beingness, and allowing that to be at the forefront of what you do, like your actions don't determine anything about your worth. You are worthy simply because you are. And I think that was a healing process for me, that I stopped tap dancing for accolades, for love, to be validated, and now was able to find peace within myself of, wait a second, none of that feels good doing that. And I don't need to do that to be loved, supported, whatever, I'm good enough on my own, by myself, just in this body, in this being. So
yeah, no more imposter, no more pretending. It was simply just let it all out.
Yeah, and it became very peaceful because I let go of these expectations and took back my agency, my time, my money, my everything, like my energy, everything just became mine again. Instead of I can't, I don't, they need, what about? It was like, no, pause. What do I want? What do I want? And what feels most aligned to me? And I now have the capacity to have that conversation with myself without shame and guilt. So when I have that conversation, I move forward in a way that's what I want and what feels good to me, instead of this is what people need me to do for them.
All right. Yeah. So that is definitely consistent with powerful and being present and being a badass and not following rules and being a trailblazer.
Yeah, I do what I want.
Yeah. And what does that really, how does that manifest? If someone's meeting you or someone's being your friend or someone's following you or someone wants services from you, who are they running into now?
Yeah, I think if you met me in my 30s, I think I was still wrapped up in a lot of the role playing of what a woman should do and like what society expects you to do. And now where I am now, I am single as a Pringle and happy. I'm not like waiting for marriage. I don't even want that life. And I don't want kids. I don't have children. So just a single child-free woman who is bucking the system and deviating from a very, I think, myopic view of what a woman is supposed to be, and creating a different narrative around what life can look like for yourself as you enter middle-aged. Why does it have to look like that? Like, I'm not old. I feel great. I'm youthful. I can run really fast. Why does it have to be that this part of your life is like when you hang it up? I just feel like I'm getting started. Yeah. And I think when you meet me now, there's this sense of I create the life I want. I create the narrative of who I'm going to be and what I want to do. Nobody else defines that for me.
Okay, so I hear the emphasis and I hear the importance of this and the prioritization of that, you making decisions for yourself.
Yeah.
And who are you now with respect to, they often say that we are tribal or that our contribution is at the highest order or something like that. We define ourselves by what we give back. Many people speak to that. Along with being ourselves, there's something like, how does that manifest in who you are for the people who come in contact with you? So who are you? What do you do? What do you do? How do you bring this healing to others? Other than obviously being a super inspirational example of what it means to be free and powerful, what is it that you do in your contact with others that allows you to exploit your healing gifts?
Yeah, I think when people meet me, they immediately, and I'm very conscious of making sure that there is no judgment, that my lens on how I live my life doesn't interfere or cloud with other people. So there's a sense of softness and safety that people get when I'm like, tell me about what works for you. Like, I have a big bandwidth and give people permission to live this life, what they feel is right for them. And I'm like, tell me more about that. There's no right or wrong. It's about, I love that journey for you and how can I support you to make that journey? So I choose to see myself as a healer in that sense, as a permission giver, as a navigator to help people find that within themselves.
Okay, so I hear that loud and clear, and I'm wondering, I've read in your bio and I'm hearing now, there's something about you partnering with people to help them get the life that they deserve or that they love in this short opportunity we call a lifetime.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about how that works. What is it? For instance, is your demographic, is your ideal client
I work with millennials. I work with millennials a lot. I think that age bracket between like 29 to 43, that's where I feel like I have some knowledge about. I am that. I've been through those life experiences. And I grew up in the same world and I think the thing about millennials that's so crazy is that we have constantly had to adapt to like such an ever-changing world in the past 25 years. Technology has advanced, like the lifestyle has advanced. I think growing up, I was the last generation of feral kids where we just took our bikes and rode around. They don't do that anymore. So I had this experience of growing up with that and being independent, but that lifestyle has drastically changed. And I have witnessed all of it. I think the millennial generation has been at such a faster pace of evolution, of progressive, like technology and just progression in general, that it causes a lot of anxiety. And we're like, wait a second, just when we get a hang of something, there's another new thing that we have to learn and do and be. And so I think working with millennials, that's a generational lifestyle I just understand. And also the deference that we grew up having to be in, of mothers who were just coming out of the patriarchy for the very first time in the 70s, getting bank accounts. What did that look like as having a mother who was still in between having full independence, but not really, and still needing financial support from her husband or her father? I'm the first woman in my family to have 100% full independence, the first woman to go to college, who broke a lot of that stuff. Anyway, so to come back to your question, to work with millennials who understand, as someone who understands like what that life is like to be in between two different phases, and to want to break a lot of these generational things that have been given to them, a lot of these societal norms, that's who I work with, like the people who are really ready to let go of that and to create their own narrative and create their own truth.
Interesting. Really, really fantastic. Is this primarily millennial women, I'm imagining, or is it men and women?
Men and women, yeah. Yeah.
And is it a coaching program per se?
Yeah.
Or it's a coaching program?
I am a neuro-linguistic programming coach. So I just basically help you rewire your default operating system that you are given and the tools in your toolbox that don't work to help you live the life that you want. Again, because we've lived in such an ever-changing time, a lot of the tools that we were given as kids and from our families who just can't comprehend and conceptualize like where we are in our lives, those tools and those narratives and that lifestyle might not work. So how do we reprogram some of that default manual and create one that works for us, not one that somebody gave to us that we have to now try to shift and morph ourselves into? How do we create one that feels more free, more liberating for us? So yeah, through coaching, I do one-on-one coaching. And my signature Inner Compass coaching is a 12-week program where we like dive in, go hard in the paint. It's a lot of deep trauma work, and we have to heal what is coming up and what wound is showing up so that wound isn't running the show time and time again. That inner child work that we have to do. So that's like a big crux of the program. And in addition to creating a value set, because if we're shifting, if we're changing, we're letting go, and we're leaving behind a version of us that someone told us we should be, who are we now? What are the values that we now want to embody moving forward? What's the plan going to look like? What's the action steps going to look like if we say that we want these things? So it is a very comprehensive, like from start to finish of where we're going on this journey.
I see. And is it laid out beforehand? Do you have like a blueprint that's set up for
I
people?
Do. I do. I have a book. I have a workbook, but I just moved and it is not here. So yeah, I do have an entire 10-chapter workbook. As a former teacher, this curriculum felt very natural for me to create. Like, how do we create kinesthetic, tangible, visual things in lessons in a workbook, like homework? Like, how are we doing this? And so we're not just talking, you're actually getting homework and you're getting skills and you're getting lessons to help create this life that you want, in addition to one-on-one coaching.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah, I just don't have the book. It is still in a box at my other place.
What's the title of the book, and how do people get a hold of the book itself? Do they have to come through you at this point?
Yeah, it's not sold independently. It's just part of the coaching program. Like we work through it together. Yeah, so it's not something you could just get on Amazon. It's something you have to get through coaching with me.
All right. And then in the Zoom coaching, how do people find you, and what would they be looking for when they actually trip across your name? Or if there's what kind of people would?
I think the biggest symptoms that people come to me with is that they're just not happy. They're not happy in their life, and they have this vision. This is the common thread in all of my clients. They're at like a starting point, like this genesis point, and they have a vision of where they want to go. And they're like, I want it so bad, but there's almost this paralysis. And I invite anybody listening, if that's making sense, like I want something so bad, but I'm not taking action. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to get there. It's not that you're lazy. It's not that you lack anything within you. What it is just a combination of clarity and strategy. And it's basically a roadmap. So how can you get to where you want to go if you're mulling around in old toxic narratives, if in limiting beliefs that aren't working? So I think the thing that most people come to me is, I just am not happy and I want something so much more than where I am in my life. And there's a lot of times people come to me after a major event, like a breakup or like a loss of a job. And it was like, how did I let this happen? I can't believe I lost myself. Like sometimes there's even like a recognition of, I'm not this person. This isn't me, you know? And how did I get here? Giving up so much of myself, of my agency, of my hopes, my dreams, my goals. And now I'm left as this like puddle on the floor. How do I get myself to a place where I feel more like me?
That's fascinating. And of course, as you say that is the second time you're saying that in this conversation, because the first person that met that criteria, of course, was you.
Exactly.
You met it at that turning point in your life where you were that puddle on the ground. Like, how did I get here? I'm not this person anymore.
Yeah.
So
like I don't
walk the walk.
Yeah. I don't want anybody to have to lose their loved one in order to live a joyful life. What if you could live a joyful life and experience joy with the people you love while they're still here to enjoy it with?
Exactly. Fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. And now, before we get too far along, can you tell us a little bit about what the Empowered Millennials podcast is all about?
Yeah. This podcast is such a funny, it's such a funny thing. I didn't think anybody cared about my little musings and stories and stuff, but it has turned into a global podcast all about storytelling of people who have had these like reckoning moments of, before my life, I was doing all this shit and I hated it. Here was my reckoning moment. And oh my God, look what I'm doing now. And I think these stories are so inspiring because we can see iterations of ourselves in them. And these stories serve as survival guides in whatever listeners may be experiencing, of like, wow, if that person can do it, I can do it too. That's the humanity of the podcast. And I've had some really incredible guests from all over the world, from Something Light. One of the top ranked episode is a woman who, my millennial heart can't handle it, has traveled around the world, and she's been to like 40 something countries with the Backstreet Boys. Like she's been to concerts of the Backstreet Boys, she like travels the world with the Backstreet Boys. I was like, this is the most incredible story. And high school me is, oh my God, I want to do that. But some even more profound thing, like surviving sex trafficking. Yeah. And it ranged the gamut of keeping it light and funny and silly to like really deeply traumatic events that remind us of how important it is to live a life we love, because it could just be taken. It's also fragile and fleeting. And it's the only truth that there is, that no one gets out of here alive. Yeah, exactly. No one gets out of this alive.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, that's the Empowered Millennials on all streaming platforms. It was just stories of people doing really dope trailblazing things.
That's fabulous. It's really great. And I love it. I can't wait to check into that podcast and see what it's all about. And
thank you.
Yeah, if people want to get a hold of you in order to get some coaching or to follow you or learn more about you or just read about you or watch your podcast or whatever, what's the best way to find you?
Yeah, you can go to my website, theangelagentile.com, and it has all the things that I'm doing. In the new year, I'll have workshops that I'm launching. I'm always taking one-on-one clients. That's always like an open rolling admission. And the podcast. And I also have my fitness brand up there too, Sweat Remix. So if you're into fitness classes and meditation, you can take some of that. So theangelagentile.com. And you can also find me on Instagram at theangelagentile. And the Empowered Millennials also has its own Instagram and TikTok. I swore I would never do TikTok. Here I am on the TikTok. I'm doing it on the TikTok at the Empowered Millennials. So you can find me there. And like I do the stupid dances and stuff. I swore I would never do it. I caved.
I know there's something pretty seductive about the whole thing.
I feel like you gotta evolve. You
Yeah.
just gotta evolve.
Yeah. Wonderful. Angela, if you had one thing to tell our guests, our listeners, or your listeners, or people in general about what's the most important thing that you'd like to pass along to the general population at this point. I think I have an idea where you might go with this, but I'm really curious if you had to make it succinct and really a solid takeaway message. What would that be?
You matter.
Yeah.
You matter. Your dreams matter. Your words matter. Your emotions, your spirit, your wants, your dreams, your life, it all matters. And it's so important that it is something that you consider and create and nurture and take care of. Because like I said, you have this gift of being in control in your life and enjoying it to the fullest with as much joy as you possibly can while the people you love are here to share it with you. So you matter.
Beautiful. I love it. It's really great. Really solid. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being a guest on the Healthy Healer. You really do personify exactly what we're looking for. You've been a spectacular guest and so much energy and so inspiring. As an elder millennial, I actually had never heard that classification or qualification. I didn't know whether you were going to be an elder or a millennial or both. And it turns out that you kind of are both, aren't you?
I'm like on the cusp. This weird, like I said, this weird feral generation of just zero technology, like a rotary phone.
Yeah.
And just riding your bike. I had a key to the house at 7 years old, starting dinner for everybody. Like that would never happen now.
Exactly. Not at all.
But then I also grew up with the internet and chat rooms and like all the other shit that comes along with this. So I've had this like weird, so I'm an elder. I'm on the cusp.
All right. Very good. Angela, thanks for being here. It's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed meeting you. I look forward to our contacts in the future.
Yeah, right.
Folks, that was Angela Gentile. And thanks for being listeners. Thanks for making it to the end of the show. If you enjoyed the show, by all means, of course, please feel free to comment or share or even subscribe to the show. And don't forget to actually take on Angela Gentile's podcast as well, which is called the Empowered Millennial Podcast. And check her out at theangelagentile.com. Folks, thanks for being here. Have a beautiful rest of the day. It's been a pleasure, and I love you, and we'll catch you on the flip side. Bye for now. Thanks again, Angela.
Thank you.
Bye.